Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Defend, Govern, Improve YouTube series that we've got running here. Just to give you guys a bit of background, this is an 8-part series that talks around the Microsoft 365 environment, but focusing on the MSP stack problem. We've titled it Defend, Govern, Improve because we want to talk around the 3 pillars of building out a really good, secure environment that works for managed service providers that can be implemented to customers. And this whole series goes through every element where you can leverage Microsoft, but where it fits within the world of security, governance, and proving that for regulatory businesses, insurance providers, and also just your customers generally. So, give you guys a bit of background. My name's Tim. I'm one of our 365 solutions architects. I've been with Enforcer for nearly 6 months from date of this publishment. And my role here is to enable MSPs to be the best they can and the most efficient, proactive business that delivers security, compliance, governance, and protection to their customers. My job is to make sure you guys are as efficient as you can be, but leveraging the tools to be proactive, less reactive, and scalable. We want scalability and reliability and efficiency when we talk to our MSPs. We're a partner for the MSPs we work with. And this is why we focus on giving these kind of web content series and webinars, YouTube series to our customers. And this is one of those key topics that I think really resonates when we talk about building out a good technology stack or tooling for MSPs to deliver the best they can for their customers. Prior to my role here, I was an MSP. I've been at 3 or 4 MSPs over the last 12 years, focusing around Microsoft 365, whether that's Azure, modern workplace as a solutions architect, more recently for an MSP in central London that really focused around financial services. So really hot on security, governance, and compliance. So I've leveraged all of Microsoft, plenty of third-party tools, and then kind of really focusing on Purview in recent years. So this series is to talk about that MSP or unifying MSP stacks, making sure we're leveraging the right tools for the customers that we service and support. And I truly do think that sits with leveraging Microsoft, and that's why we're doing this series. So it's part of the Defend, Govern, Improve. This episode today is focused on the MSP stack problem. I want to talk about the tools that we're currently using previously versus what we're using now, or what we could be using now. And then moving forward, we're going to be doing things around managed email security, endpoint security. We have some live webinars that we'll be talking around this throughout the course of 2026 and beyond. We've got plenty to come. But in the meantime, sit back. Hopefully, you'll find this quite useful. So today's episode is around the MSP stack problem. If you're an MSP, I would always encourage you guys to start counting how many portals you need to log in before 10 a.m. The reality is it's going to be far more than 6. And it is. You know, we've got our documentation solution, RMM solution. We need to be logging into 365. Perhaps by 10 a.m., if you're a service desk engineer, you've logged into 3 or 4 different Microsoft 365 portals to service problems or fix issues, particularly on Monday morning with password resets. It's a continuous journey for ourselves. We are constantly having to log into different portals, cloud backup solutions, additional platforms, antivirus platforms that are third party, all of these things. I'd even include all the portals within Microsoft 365 in this solution that I'm discussing here. We built the modern MSP stack to protect everything. As MSPs, we focused on making sure when we support a customer, they are secure on the endpoint, their emails are secure. We can remote monitor and manage their environment, i.e. the RMM. We're backing things up. We're keeping things protected. Maybe it's a SOC. We're getting alerts in, providing a reactive solution and a service. Live responses are critical. The thing is, we don't need more tools. What we actually need is better trust in a single platform, or better trust in minimal platforms. And it starts with making sure the tools that we leverage provide more of the products or solutions and services that we need. And for me, well, I'm obviously working in Enforcer. The conversation here is around Enforcer at the end of the day. That single platform for me, I do believe most of it can be solved with Enforcer. So we can discuss that a bit later on throughout the course of this series, in fact. So let's talk about the stack and how it's spiraling. So previously, and I have this on another slide, we've used and we've leveraged multiple tools over the last several 15 plus years. We look at that stack of solutions that we need. The constant renewal cycles is a pain in the ass. Portal overload, let's be transparent, it's fatigue for your engineers when we have to start teaching them 10 different portals, 10 different policies within those portals, 10 different roles, configurations, sign multiple platforms to say we accept the risks associated with using yet another portal, patch management, EDR, IAM, email security, backup, SIEM solutions, compliance tools, you name it. There are so many, and it's a stack of solutions for MSPs that's going to drive us mad. Our finance team probably go crazy when we talk about yet another license or another license renewal, another thing we have to keep on. We're building a skyscraper of complexity, and we need to consider, particularly for this year and moving forward with AI coming into the forefront, more cybersecurity risks. We need to start a consolidation. The more tools we have, yeah, it spreads the load maybe in terms of risk of things going down, but let's be transparent. Most of this day and age, we're leveraging Microsoft 365 across the globe. Millions and millions of companies are using it. If the product goes down, it doesn't matter if email doesn't work, because at the end of the day, our spam filter is useless if it's external because our emails are down. Unless we've got redundancy with Mailflow, and we can send emails elsewhere, most companies solely rely on it. So it doesn't matter if we've got an external email solution for phishing. It's already integrated and baked into Microsoft 365. Should we not consider using this already? My suggestion is probably we should. We don't need to have another tool, another login for ourselves to use when Microsoft's already injected £20 billion into email or into security within their environment. It's more than most leading providers for EDR solutions, security solutions out there. We should be considering how do we consolidate stacks of solutions into one single tool. I think Microsoft is a big driver for that. What's the cost complexity? I mean, when we look at what's been happening over the last 5 years, we've clearly had a 30 to 50% rise in the costs of most of the products we're using. That might seem like only 10, 20, 30p per end user, but we're then offsetting that either by ourselves, we're just absorbing that cost and giving it to our third party vendors, or we're having to go to the customer and say, you need to pay, let's say, an extra £2 per user per month. We're in a world where there's always rising costs and it's going to continue to rise. If we are duplicating costs because we're paying for one license that's perhaps already included in, say, Business Premium we're using at the moment with Microsoft, we're duplicating value or duplicating costs that we're then offboarding or lending or providing back to the customer, or we're absorbing ourselves. Should we be doing that? I would be questioning that we don't. And the reality is, clients don't care at how many tools we use or the tools that we're using. The reality is they only care about how safe they can feel and how clearly you can prove it as an MSP. And I will probably admit, and I will put my hand up to this, some customers don't even care how safe they feel. They just want to know that it's handled by someone else. But for us as MSPs, our focus should be on security, compliance, governance, and proving the value of what we're delivering. And the one thing we quite often forget is enforcing an environment, i.e., the governance piece, and proving it. Like if a risk came into play and we're talking to a customer that doesn't care about how safe they are, but they have just assumed it's handled by you, you need to be able to go back to them and prove to them that you have implemented the best policies you could based on the conversations you've had. And it starts with making sure that we are keeping things safe, secure, and the real MSP impacts are clear. We have rising costs. We're having alert overload with productivity down and fatigue up because we're getting alerts from all over the place from different portals. Fragmented reporting, inconsistent client visibility is a big factor when we talk about customers that do care about their environment, their technology. We need to make sure that our reports are consistent to the customer. They are getting the right information and it's coming from the right value. And lastly, that single source. The audit prep multiple readiness is really required nowadays, making sure that we are providing a single source or a single pane of glass with the right reports. And Enforcer focuses around Microsoft 365, which is why I'm driving this focus on unifying our MSP stack to a product that's freely available. but you guys are already leveraging Microsoft as a multi-tenant solution. Currently, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of tenants that we support, depending on the MSP on this discussion and call at the moment. How do we make sure that we are leveraging the products that we already have available? And then once we do, how do we measure and enforce those processes, i.e., the governance, drift detection, and then more importantly, proving it? We need to be able to run reports and prove that value to the customer. And that starts with looking at that single source of truth and unifying the stack that we currently have. So I want to talk about the shift. I think, particularly the last 5 years, and I think particularly more critically the next 5 years, people are going to start focusing on Microsoft being that central pillar. It started as just a single piece of the puzzle, i.e., email, maybe some share filing with SharePoint, but a single piece for that complex security product. Whereas now, Microsoft, with their $20 billion injection of security improvements, we now have Entra ID, the identity protection and governance piece. We have Intune, device compliance and management. We've got the Purview piece, that data governance, the data loss prevention and auditing platform. That's the area we're looking at for reporting and ongoing governance of an environment. I've put 365 E5 licensing because I'm a lover of that product or license, but I know that we've got Business Premium, Defender Suite for Business, which covers more than enough for our SMB customers. And then we've got the XDR suite, that license uplift with Defender Suite for Business really covers that single security plane that we discussed with our customers. This is really critical. Microsoft have basically said, look, we know that you guys are using different companies. We know that there are competitors out there, but let us build you a single unified platform for you to be able to deliver the best practice for your customers. This is targeted for enterprise businesses. There's no doubt about it. And Microsoft are openly admitting this with Intune for MSPs. They're deliberately saying use Enforcer to focus on a unified multi-tenant management solution so you can leverage those enterprise platforms, but from a single source, i.e. Enforcer. For MSPs, that means you can replace those 6 vendors with one stack, i.e. Microsoft, and then leverage those outcomes and those deliveries with Enforcer, that single pane of glass. But even Microsoft's power doesn't solve the last piece of the puzzle. So it doesn't solve necessarily that proof. And that's the gap when we talk about defend, govern, improve. Microsoft are taking defense. They're giving us that configuration piece, the ability to configure and manage those policies, providing that Entra ID, Intune, Purview, Defender Suite, that Encompass solution. They're allowing us to govern it with the right licensing. We've got data governance. We've got governance in identity protection with conditional access. Governance isn't just about data. It's about making sure that what we implement and configure is enforced across the business and we can measure that enforcement. But we need to be able to prove that value. And that's really where that gap sits. And that's where I think Enforcer provides that gap. And this is why we talk about defend, govern, and prove. That compliance gap, the evidence that we need to be able to prove that we are implementing these things and we're providing the value for the customer. And I think the statement we always get with at least one, if not several customers every year is, what am I getting for my money when I'm paying you per user or per device per month? And the reality is, we give customers a reactive report. This is how many tickets. We're providing you a support resolution. But I really challenge an MSP to look further past just a reactive measure. We always talk about being proactive. For the first time, I think, in years, we have the ability to demonstrate governance and proof as a proactive measure to customers. We don't want to just do a single deployment, make sure it's configured, a single point configuration, and then Foxtrot Oscar to the next project. We need to be able to go from professional service one-time delivery to ongoing managed governance delivery. Governance as a service isn't just data governance. It's making sure that the implementations we've configured stick. So when we have an exclusion, someone is excluded from a policy or a policy is changed, we need to measure that change. We need to identify what change was made, the metric that's been made, why it's been made, who made it, and should it have been made. That's governance as a service. That's ongoing protection. That's ongoing security analysis. All of that sits with the governance piece. And fundamentally, we then need to prove it. So with Enforcer, we can have drift detection. We can make sure that we are keeping customers aligned continuously, whether that's partial alignment or a full alignment to our best practices in MSP. And I say this, and I'll always say it, I'll probably even say it in the next episode and the episode after that. An MSP doesn't need to have a unique security baseline, it needs to be secure. And that's secure across the board. Every single person that we talk to, anyone that's reading this or listening to this YouTube series now, it's not about being unique. Every customer is going to have some unique policies, but the foundations of a good, governed, and well defended environment or defended environment starts with the same security measures. And there are lots of people out there that provide recommendations of security measures they could put in place, but fundamentally, it's all about being secure. And then we have to govern that security, and that's leveraging Enforcer to make sure drift detection's in place for those alerting, single day one value when we talk about bringing on all our customers into a single platform like Enforcer is, can we make sure that we are governing that environment? Can we make sure that change is made, we're being alerted to it? And if you haven't got them in a single source like Enforcer, you're not going to get that governance piece. The second part is the evidence. So let's take away the governance. How do we prove that value? So that statement, what am I getting for my money, rings true for most of our customers. How do we demonstrate we are providing that governance piece? How do we make sure that we are proving that? And that starts with reporting, starts with drift detection email alerts to say, hey, look, we are being proactive. We've received an alert to say, Jeffrey, the head of IT for your business, has made a change. We've previously agreed with you we wouldn't make any changes to this, so we've reverted it. Or perhaps it's an auto remediation, it's auto reverted back based on your alignment piece. It's that multi tenant blind spot. We need to see a unified platform, a single pane of glass to make sure our customers are on track to being secure and readily available. And proof doesn't sit with just the customer. Proof sits with your business owners, the CEOs that are watching this, the ones that want to make sure that the customers they're supporting really are secure. That multi tenant blind spot is so important. We need to make sure we can see our customers and they're aligned to our best practices, our security values. And when I say our, I mean your best practices in security. Almost all of us will have the same security measures, they're just going to be named differently. Different named policy, different configuration, maybe something that doesn't matter for one industry that does for another. When we talk about industries that we support, financial, medical, pharmaceutical, and so on. And the last thing is being able to provide that evidence. So, running those alignment reports that you have with Enforcer, the ability to produce a report that shows you are aligned to our best practice. And we can measure that with policy tagging to determine that this policy adheres to DORA configurations, for example. We can leverage those that we've got configured and we can demonstrate that with an alignment report. It's prospecting. We're bringing on a customer that's going to start that three tier pillar with us: defense, governance, proof. We need to be able to prove this is where you were from day one, and this is where you are for day two, and this is where you're going to be at day 143. And the next episode I'm going to be talking about, which is coming up shortly, is fixing that framework, understanding those steps. So let's look at framework here. We've spoken about that unified piece. I've probably spoken about these slides already, but the framework sits for us around defense, governance, and proof. And this is the triangle, the pillar that we talk about when we unify a solution and we talk specifically around Enforcer. Microsoft covers the defense. Microsoft is giving us the ability with a single tool to understand Defender, Entra, so Defender for Office, Defender for Endpoint, identity protection, device management. All of that's available in that single source, that defending piece. Then we want to look at governance. That governance sits with data governance, device governance ongoing. But if we take data governance to start with, that's purview. That's data loss prevention. That's policies across your estate. We need to be able to measure and protect against that. So that ongoing governance piece starts with leveraging drift detection, utilizing a single pane of glass in Enforcer for your alignment piece, making sure they're governed correctly. We are using Enforcer not just to provide the right security deployments for policies and your best practices, but we're governing it by making sure they're aligned to our best practice, and we're receiving drift detections for that proactive step to sort out remediations. And then finally, on top of that pillar, the area that we always forget, and this is really where Enforcer gives day one value, is that proof. Running those reports, looking at those measurements, demonstrating the value that we bring as a business as an MSP to our customers, all of that's available with the proof that we're looking for with Enforcer. I think this is the new MSP model. And that's why we're doing this series. This is why this 8-part series covers this. We need to defend our clients. We need to govern the environments we're looking at. We need that single pane of glass for all of our tenants, not just a handful. When we onboard customers, I often see 20, 30, 40 tenants being added of an estate that maybe has 1,000. That's not a single pane of glass. We might be looking at using it just to make sure we're comfortable with the tool, but the reality is we're leveraging tools like Enforcer for that day one value, being able to govern the environments we're seeing, prove that value. And the last point of that is the proof of the value, making sure that the tools you're using, we can demonstrate the value for our customers, demonstrate the value for our business owners, demonstrate the value for regulatory businesses, regulatory bodies, auditors. All of that starts with making sure we have the right products, the right reports under that single pillar. And that's that triangle for us. The pyramids that we're talking about, Microsoft do this really well with their own pyramids of solutions they offer, and it covers it perfectly. But for when we talk about the three pillars, defend, govern, and prove, all of that sits here. The ability to leverage Microsoft, utilize the governance through Purview, through Enforcer, and prove that value, leveraging Enforcer's environment. So moving forward, what's next? So I've spoken to you, and I hope this has been really valuable, seeing where we should be going as MSPs and what we could look at. But next episode I want to do is about managed email security, managed stack that we're using, what we've used previously versus what we can be leveraging now. This is going to be a small demo. We're going to go through a few slides. We'll go through what Microsoft has to offer currently in the security suite around email security. And then we might dip into some of the Enforcer product as well, depending on time. Hope this has been really useful. Any questions at all, again, reach out to Enforcer, get some demos booked, look at ourselves, see the platform, see what we're trying to deliver through those three pillars. And let's get you guys in a unified MSP moving forward. Look out for episode 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And hopefully this is proving some value. Thank you very much for your time, guys.